Well, hello everybody. I hope that this works. Welcome to the live stream of VATSIM session where I will answer your questions basically. And so this is the first time I'm trying to do this. I have no idea if this is gonna work properly or not, but we're just gonna give it a good try. So I'm just kind of testing a little if it's all working. So far it seems to be pretty good, so we'll see what happens. I'll just take a moment to share this event on Facebook. Let's take a look. I have no idea how many people will show up, but we'll see what happens. Of course, you can leave your questions in the comments box next to this video, and then I'll try to answer them. Of course, I'm not an enormous VATSIM expert or something, but I should. Alright, so we're gonna start just with some questions that I receive a lot. Of course, with all my videos on YouTube, I'm getting a lot of questions about VATSIM, about flying on VATSIM, you know, how to become an air traffic controller, what to do in this and this scenario, things like that. So, yeah, I thought this might be a good moment to just answer at least for 1 hour some questions about VATSIM. People can also watch this video afterwards, and then they can look up the questions in the description, and then they can get some answers for that. So yeah, everything is set now. So just gonna start with I've already made a little list of questions that I receive a lot. So if you do have questions, please post them next to this video so I can answer them live. Of course, that would be the most fun thing to do, but we'll just see how it works. And let's take a look. There are about 3 people watching right now, so I know you're there. So you better ask your questions right now. Right. I hope the audio is okay. I have a new microphone. The microphone that I've been using for the last couple of years to record my videos broke a couple of weeks ago. So it was a very good microphone, very cheap, but it had a good microphone on it, the headset. So I'm using a new headset. It doesn't have a good microphone, not really good enough for flying, but I'll just use this one for the time being, and then I can get a better headset in the end to, you know, for better voice-over quality. So let's start with a question I get probably most of the time. Well, probably the question I receive most of the time is, when is the next VATSIM Full Flight video coming up? Well, that's always a bit hard for me to tell. You know, I always like making those videos, but it's a lot of work. Of course, you need to make the flight itself, and that involves a lot of preparation. You need to get, you know, scramble some charts. You need to do the pre-flight planning, because of course I want that flight to be as good as possible. Of course, I make mistakes. Of course, you have seen me making mistakes in those videos, like shutting down an engine at final approach, something like that. You know, but I just want to be prepared for the flight, as every pilot should do, because you're gonna run into trouble if you just don't prepare at all. If you know, just fly somewhere without having an idea of the procedures at the airport, or you know, how the SID works, what the altitude restrictions might be, things like that. You know, you just need to be aware of that. So those videos require a lot of work beforehand, and then the flight itself, well, it's not a lot of hard work. It's just 1.5 hours of flying, and on the way, along the way, of course, explain what I'm doing. That's not the most hard part. And then comes the editing. The editing is a lot of work because, of course, I want to cut out the bad scenes, well, the unnecessary scenes, basically that's just not worth it to be in the video, so I just have to cut those out. And of course I have to provide some subtitles. I always do that so you can learn from it, or you might not be able to clearly hear what the air traffic controller says, so if you have subtitles it's much better to understand what he's saying. And when I say cutting out the bad bits, it doesn't mean that I'm cutting out things like mistakes, because you can learn from those mistakes, and so I keep those in the video, and then I, apply what I've learned from those mistakes in the next flight I make. So when the next VATSIM video is coming up, well, maybe at the end of this month if I have time. Of course, I have to start at university again pretty soon, so yeah, we'll just see how it goes. But I hope to get at least one in end of August or in September, and also one in the winter maybe. So we'll see how it goes. Questions are coming in already. Do you have X-Plane 10? Javier asks that. No, I don't have X-Plane. Simply because I don't really, I never really liked X-Plane, just the looks of it. They say that you can fly better with X-Plane, but I just don't know if that really makes sense. I just like the looks of Flight Simulator, Microsoft Flight Simulator. I've been using it for a very long time. I know how to edit stuff, how to, all the technical little details behind Flight Simulator, and of course, the market for Flight Simulator is pretty good. Although I do hear that there's quite a few good products for X-Plane out there as too. But personally, I just prefer Flight Simulator, so I don't have X-Plane 10. And the Fearless asks if I ever want to go to FSX. Yeah, maybe. With my next PC, if this one dies, I need to switch to a new PC, which are generally much better than the current PC I have. I might switch to FSX or Prepar 3D. Of course, those are very good flight simulators, and I'm really impressed by those flight simulators. But the bad thing is they require questions about VATSIM, and otherwise I'll have a lot of questions in row in my little document with questions about VATSIM. So try to keep asking questions about VATSIM and save those other questions for a later time. So we already talked about my next VATSIM Full Flight video. Another question I receive quite a lot is, how realistic is VATSIM actually? Of course, flying with Flight Simulator, is it realistic in general, and what's the advantage of being on VATSIM? Well, of course, with Flight Simulator, I don't think you really learn how to fly an airplane. It's not that if you can land a Boeing 737 in Flight Simulator that you can land a Boeing 737 in the real world. But of course you learn how to operate the systems very well. You learn how to program the FMC, how to start up the engines, how to shut down the engines. How to operate the autopilot, and of course, a big thing about VATSIM is the radio telephony, so the RT, speaking with air traffic control, and that is very realistic. It might be scary sometimes to join VATSIM because of its realism. Of course, you cannot become a flight simulator or a VATSIM pilot instantly. You need to do some work before you can join. You need to make mistakes. Those mistakes, those are mistakes you have to learn from. But the realism of VATSIM is just the the whole environment, you know, with air traffic controllers and pilots talking to each other on a frequency, you know, using real-world procedures, you know, using very advanced aircraft, most people, and if you do not, I can really recommend it, you know, at least an aircraft with an FMC and an aircraft like PMDG or Level D or the iFly, you know, there are a lot of good products out there. And you need to do some learning. It's not that you can instantly fly those airplanes. You need to learn how to operate those. And in combination with that radio telephony, the whole environment of VATSIM is very realistic. You know, I myself had a flying lesson once, and during the approach, you know, the captain was taking over for the landing in a Cessna 172, and I had the opportunity to do the air traffic control. So, you know, reports, you know, being on the downwind leg, report on the base leg, you know, and I knew how to do it. That's the great thing. I think you're definitely a step ahead when you start flying in the real world and when you've flown on VATSIM for a long time. I think you're definitely a step ahead and you know what to do already. So that's a really great thing. It's amazing to be able to learn, you know, to be able to apply what you have learned in VATSIM in the real world, and that's what I did. So it's very realistic. And of course, the question is how far you want to go with this realism. There are of course boundaries, but I think the aim of every VATSIM member should be to, you know, climb up and go towards this realism, because otherwise the network would be quite useless. I mean, that's what VATSIM is known for. It's known for its realism, and real-world pilots use it. I mean, it's a great learning environment. So it's pretty darn realistic, I think, and you know, we should all together try to keep it realistic, and of course that's done by air traffic control training and pilot training. So yeah, I think the VATSIM network is doing a pretty good job at you know, making sure everything is realistic, and we are using real world procedures. So yeah, I think that's about it. And then Patrick asks, that's a hard word, isn't it? What model matching you use for VATSIM? I bet you mean about you know, the AI traffic, or the, you know, the models you use for Squawk Box, or, you know, the models that show up as other airplanes. Personally, I don't really have an advanced setup there. Of course, you can do a lot to, you know, use your, you know, the add-ons, the models of add-ons like Ultimate Traffic or World of I, you know, those kind of products to, you know, use those models when flying online. So if someone logs in with a Ryanair Boeing 737, you're really gonna see a good Ryanair 737 livery and aircraft. So there are ways to do that, but I don't really do that. I'm still using the standard Squawk Box set, actually, which is not pretty good. Sometimes you have these aircraft, those VIP aircraft, you know, those white with blue aircraft. You don't really recognize that, and that's simply because I never really took time to do that properly. So yeah, I have to do that sometimes. So I'm still using the default Squawk Box AI set, and well, of course the advantage is I can see airplanes. That's at least one thing, but I could do better on that actually. So thanks for the question, Patrick. Yeah, I could do better. Maybe later. I don't really have a good product yet. Maybe when I'm switching to FSX, I'm gonna buy something like Ultimate Traffic to fix nautical information publication here in the Netherlands. I think that's quite a general term for the publications of charts of all the airports in the country. And so we're just gonna visit the website of your VAC, and they will have a link there to the AIP, the Aeronautical Information Publications, and there you will be able to find charts. Now, for some countries it might be a little bit more difficult, but you can always ask people flying on VATSIM or an air traffic controller, where do I find charts for this airport? Because charts are really necessary. Yeah, there are some other ways to find charts. There's the VATSIM chart database, I believe, but that's mostly for American countries, North America, Canada. There's yeah, you can buy Jeppesen charts or download old Jeppesen charts, but of course the downside of Jeppesen charts, if you download them, most times they are out of date, so I don't think it's legal either. So you're using old charts, and that's not a good idea, because charts get updated every time, and with those government AIP charts you always have the up-to-date charts, because we all know about the magnetic deviation, and so based on that, the course to an ILS approach might change, for example, or like at Schiphol Amsterdam Airport, they are now in the process of building a new pier, so the ground chart is going to change. Gates are being removed constantly, so yeah, it's really wise to have updated charts, so you can pick the AIP charts, because those are the most up to date, and yeah, they give exactly the same good overview of a Jeppesen. I believe Jeppesen charts are not always on scale, but the government AIP charts mostly are, at least from the countries I've been to. So so go to the VAC website of that country you're going to fly to and from, or the Eurocontrol website for Europe, for example. And of course, Google is your great friend here too. If you need charts and route charts, for example, there are ways to get those too. So, and if you really can't find it, just type it in Google, because you'll always be able to find something. So it's not that hard. It's really easy, actually. And reading those charts is also something you just have to learn. And yeah, it's not like you instantly know how to read charts. You just need to take some time while not flying and study those charts, because every bit of information makes sense actually on that chart. And if there are terms you don't know about, just Google them. There are always people who have asked this before, or forums or things like that. So you'll always be alright about charts. Let's move over to another question. Do I need pilot training? No, that's not a requirement of VATSIM. That's quite funny, isn't it? Air traffic controllers do need training. But if you think about it, it does make sense, because the air traffic controllers need to be able to guide the traffic through the virtual airspace very well. So they have a great responsibility over multiple airplanes and multiple pilots. So let's say out of every one controller you have 10 pilots on an evening. It's impossible to train all of those 10 pilots, because there are many thousands of VATSIM members. VATSIM members who have an account or who fly every night. So it's just almost impossible to train every pilot on the VATSIM network. That's just very hard work. But the air traffic controllers are of course a lot less. So and they need to be trained. That's something you have to do. You're gonna start at delivery, and then you can make hours and build your way up to eventually become a radar controller if you want to. But if you have at least one part of the aviation spectrum, trained, like air traffic controllers, they can show, their professionality. They can show how it must be done on VATSIM. And the pilots, of course, there are a lot of ways to learn how to fly on the VATSIM network. I myself am a flight instructor at the VATSIM Pilot Training Academy, which of course is a great source of information. There's a lot of textual information. So you know, a lot of topics in the VATSIM Information Center. You know, there are many ways for a pilot to learn how to fly on VATSIM. While air traffic controllers, it's different for every country and for every airport. There are different procedures, and you know, it's not like if I am an air traffic controller in Amsterdam, I can become an air traffic controller in Paris. That just doesn't work that way. So no, you don't need pilot training. I do recommend to follow pilot training if you really have trouble flying on VATSIM. And otherwise, just read the information. You know, first train offline with your airplane to get used to flying and operating the airplane. And you know, after flying offline, knowing how to program the FMC, knowing how to shut down and land, you know, the airplane, the basic things. Then it's time to join VATSIM. And you know, if you join VATSIM, it's not a wise idea to, you know, jump into an event straight away. That's probably the worst thing you're gonna do, because it's a nightmare for a controller to deal with a newbie. Of course, that sounds frightening, and make sure you train yourself, and then it will be fine in the end. So yeah, that's about pilot training. So it's not a requirement, but do it yourself and build your way up. That's basically the main thing I want to say. Okay, there's another question coming in there. Who I'm not used to talking like this. It's kind of like a podcast. I have respect for people who do podcasts like this. You know, some people make 3-hour-long podcasts just talking and talking. My voice is already starting to go down a little already. So, are you also controlling? Yes. Well, not really anymore. I'm a certified ground controller at Amsterdam, but I'm not really active anymore. That's just because I enjoy flying much more than controlling. Of course, controlling is great too. Especially when it's busy, because you really need to you know, make everything smooth, let the traffic flow go smooth, do some planning. And it's a whole other thing than flying, because you know, when you are controlling, you are responsible for multiple aircraft, and you are responsible for making the pilots happy. And yeah, it's a great thing to control, but I've not been controlling for a long time, probably a year ago, I think. Yeah, that's must be about it. But it's yeah, you start a delivery, and I believe you need to make about 20 hours on delivery, and then I went to Amsterdam grounds. But yeah, you know, I got the flying bug much more than the controlling bug. So yeah, I just prefer to keep flying and go to different airports. And luckily, our VAC, the Dutch VAC, has many controllers who are able to control every night. So yeah, I just prefer to fly. That's just more my thing. And there are other people who prefer controlling much more. There are even people who don't have a flight simulator. They just you know, do the controlling. Because they just simply like it more. And of course, you know, you're welcome to do so, because I mean, the controlling side is also very realistic, of course. So yeah, that's basically it. And am I planning to do long haul videos? Well, I don't know. I'm not really a fan of long haul flights. That's just because it takes a lot of time, and my philosophy is a bit more like, you know, make short flights and learn a lot, have a lot of fun, you know, in short flights, rather than, you know, going from Amsterdam to New York and sitting in front of your computer for hours. You know, I just prefer the short flights, because you can make more takeoffs and landings. And you know, the benefit of Europe is you're traveling to different countries. I mean, you just need to make a couple of miles and you're in a totally different country, and you know, you don't spend a lot of time cruising, so that, you know, it enables you to have a lot of fun. And of course on VATSIM, if you're in a, you know, if you're making a flight on a very busy evening, then it's just great, because you have a lot of ATC. You're going from center to center frequency, and then the approach frequency, you know. So yeah, I just prefer the short flights. Maybe I'll do a long haul video sometime, because of course, you know, crossing the pond, you know, crossing the North Atlantic. I mean, it's quite something. It's you know, to do that once. I've done it twice. Man, that was a long time ago. Once from Amsterdam to New York, and the other one I did during the night. So it was nighttime here in the Netherlands, and I was flying during the night. I stayed awake to travel back from New York to Amsterdam. It was crazy. That must be about 6 years ago. So yeah, I might do such a video, because of course it's great fun, and it involves totally different procedures. You know, crossing the Atlantic is you know, very special actually. So maybe once, but I cannot guarantee. You know, if I had to choose between long haul and short haul, I would definitely choose short haul. Even if I become a pilot later on, maybe. I would love to, you know, keep flying on the 737s and not flying on the 747s. Just, you know, you're going to be flying for many hours. You're going to be away for about a week, and you know, I think you just can enjoy flying much more if you're just, you know, making a lot of takeoffs and landings, because that's what flying is about. But it's actually on VATSIM to just intercept an airplane like that, you need to have permission from the pilot and from the air traffic controller. So, but you can, you know, again, if you want to do this, it's best to do it in your own country, just like becoming an air traffic controller, because you know, if you fly military in your own country, there are probably quite a few other people who have already experience with the military procedures. So you can basically fly together, and yeah, they will teach you the military procedures. They are a bit different from the real world procedures, of course. So yeah, if you want to do that, make sure you contact your own VAC, find people who are already flying military, and yeah, I think it's great fun. Of course, it's not like you, for example, cannot take a Spitfire out for flying on VATSIM, because a Spitfire is a totally different. It's not a military plane anymore. It has become a VFR airplane. You can use it as a VFR airplane, but an F-16 isn't. F-16 really has to use military procedures, I think, at least for the most part. Things like military cargo, you know, the military cargo flights, I believe they just use you know, the general aviation procedures. So if you want to take a, what is it, Boeing C-17, what is it, you know, one of those transport airplanes out for a flight to, I don't know, Afghanistan, just using you know, air routes, I think that should be fine. But I'm not sure about it. But you know, there are a lot of military cargo transport flights, so you can basically yeah, do those flights using, you know, civil aviation procedures. You don't really need military procedures for that. So, but if you're flying an F-16 fighter jets, you know, or special routes, you probably need to do something else. And yeah, really ask advice, because you know, you better just not do something wrong on VATSIM, because otherwise you get kicked out, and that's of course a shame. So yeah, that's about military flying. And do I have what's my favorite add-on? Well, I think it's the iFly right now for Flight Simulator 2004. I mean, the iFly is a great airplane. I think it's the best add-on for Flight Simulator 2004. Of course, I've been flying the Level D Boeing 767 for a long time, which is a great aircraft too, system-wise. But you know, the iFly 737 is a great add-on, system-wise and you know, visual-wise. I mean, the visuals of that airplane are just amazing. You know, a lot of 3D knobs, especially within the limits of Flight Simulator 2004. So yeah, it's a great airplane. And currently that's together with the Embraer 135 or Field Air. That's the only aircraft I fly on VATSIM actually. So, and sometimes I use the 767. So yeah. So yeah, people try to keep your questions as much as possible focused to VATSIM. I think it's a good idea to get another live session to talk about Flight Simulator in general and my own life in general, because I mean, there's so much to talk about aviation. Maybe VATSIM, just VATSIM, is not good enough. But for now, I want to keep the questions focused on VATSIM. All right. But it's working pretty good. So I see there are a lot of people watching, so that's a great thing, of course. There's another question coming in. What would be the order? This is from Saren. What would be the order of procedures if you accidentally crash on VATSIM to avoid interruption to other pilots? Yeah, accidentally crash on VATSIM. Of course, that's always the question. Is a pilot does the pilot accidentally have a malfunction, or did he do it on purpose? You know, that's always a bit difficult. If you want to simulate an emergency on VATSIM, that's fine. You just need to ask clearance from A to C. You just send them a private message and say, hey, I want to simulate a bird strike during takeoff. Is that okay with you? And then they say, alright, it's not busy, so that's alright. Or they might say, no, I don't want you to do that because it's very busy and we simply cannot afford that, and it will disrupt the other pilots. So if you want to simulate an emergency, that's fine, as long as you ask it to the air traffic controller. But if really something happens, you know, it could happen. I don't know. You might have configured something wrong, or you know, if you're using an old airplane where one switch could mean life or death for that engine, you know, something could happen. And if it's beyond your fault, you're gonna have to go on. You know, if an air traffic controller really says, I don't want this, then it's better just to sign off and complete your flight offline. And if the air traffic controller is okay, if you declare an emergency and then they say nothing about it and they just handle it as an emergency, I think you can go on. And of course, the first thing you should try is not to crash at all. You know, try to land the airplane, and you know, the air traffic controller will make sure that you will not interrupt other pilots. And yeah, so it really depends on the situation. And you know, if you accidentally crash on VATSIM, I think it's already over because you already crashed your airplane, right? So at that point, it's a good moment to disconnect. But you know, if really something happens, if you have an engine failure mid-flight, own pilot training, or you just did not come across it, but there's this thing called Unicom on VATSIM, and if there's no air traffic controller online, you should set your squawk to 7,000. No, it's not. It's not 7,000. What is it? 2200, I think. Let's see, squawk code. You have to. Oh, I actually forgot. I can't remember. But there's a general squawk code you have to set when there's no air traffic controller online. I believe the pilot client automatically sets a squawk code when you're airborne and you don't, you know, reset your squawk. And in terms of you know, tuning a radio frequency, you have to contact. Well, no, not contact. You have to monitor Unicom. So Unicom is basically a frequency. I believe. No, don't know. I'm not sure if this is true for every continent, but the general frequency of Unicom on VATSIM is 122.8, and when you tune in that frequency, you can basically stay in touch with other pilots around you. So using text, you can let other pilots know what you're doing, and in that way the pilots can arrange their own separation. For example, if you're on the final approach, you report Amsterdam traffic, KLM 123, final approach runway 06. So in that way other pilots know where you are, and if they need to keep a little bit more distance, or just in case. So you have to tune 122.8. Sometimes, of course, you fly out of a radar frequency, out of their control region, and they say monitor Unicom on 122.8, or if they don't like that sentence, they say KLM 123, no further ATC available, frequency change is approved, and then you basically should come up with the idea yourself of switching to the Unicom frequency of 122.8. So make sure you tune that frequency, make sure you use it as well. Of course, it can be disturbing for a pilot who's actively using Unicom to suddenly find an aircraft in front of his nose who didn't say anything, of course. And so make sure you let the other pilots know how it works, what you're doing, where you are, and especially when close to landing, close to other traffic. I mean, in the real world, there are also frequencies or airports without a proper air traffic controller. They also have a frequency, they can talk. On VATSIM that's not possible, but they can talk to each other, or using the frequency they can show the other pilots where they are. They tell other pilots they are on the base leg, or they tell other pilots they are taking off in north direction, for example. So make sure you tune that Unicom frequency, and make sure you you just let other pilots know where you are and what you're doing. That's the best thing to do. Alright, about 15 minutes to go. No other questions yet. No live comment session. Maybe it's a nice idea to once do a TeamSpeak discussion or something like that. Maybe we'll find out. There's a lot of opportunity for these kind of things, so that's great stuff. Of course, everything is still working perfectly. Alright, I'll just pick another question from my own list. Oh, it is another interesting one. Am I allowed to leave the cockpit mid-flight? That's a good question. Well, basically the answer is no. For 30 minutes, I believe that's about the maximum. But in general, it's no, because it's not a good idea to leave the cockpit, especially on short-haul flights or flights through busy airspace, for example. I believe it's 30 minutes is the maximum, but I'm not sure about that number. It might be 15 minutes. But it's not wise to leave the cockpit. It's okay to do something else in your room. As long as you have an eye on your flying, the status of your airplane. If it's still flying the route you should be following, you need to be able to respond to air traffic control when they want to. I mean, that's what happens in the real world as well. So it's okay to do something else, read a book, play the guitar, whatever you want. But it's not wise to leave the cockpit. It's okay to go and use the bathroom. I mean, when you have to go, you have to go. So you just ask the air traffic controller, hey, I'm gonna be leaving the cockpit for 2 minutes. Then they usually know what it's for. The pilot has to use the bathroom. Okay, yeah, that's fine, and report back when you're back in the cockpit. So that's fine. But it's not allowed to go shopping. It's not allowed to, go down and watch telly. It's just keep a good eye on the cockpit, especially during short cruises with busy airspace. Always keep an eye, because this again might be a disruption to other pilots. And they might get annoyed because there's a pilot who's not responding, and you know, he could get banned from VATSIM just not responding. Maybe not that bad, maybe for a day or two, but I'm not really sure how that works. But you know, so be careful, because there are supervisors, and you know, air traffic controllers might report you. Hey supervisor, this pilot is not responding anymore. I have not been able to get in contact with him for the past 30 minutes. You know, and then you know you're gonna be kicked out of the VATSIM network, and you're not, you know, able to you know, fly on VATSIM. So it's a shame if you do that. So just keep a good eye on your airplane. It's okay to read a book, but it's okay to use the bathroom, as virtual airlines are doing. And so yeah, I think it's great to join a virtual airline if you have time to make a lot of flights, and if you really want to get to know the operations of an airline. But if you're like me, only make one flight a month, you know, you don't really care about the operation of the airline. You just want to, you know, do the flight planning yourself quickly, and then just make a good flight, have a good time in the air. Then it might not be very useful to join a virtual airline. But if you're really interested in the operations behind an airline, if you like to receive your flight plan, if you really like to have names of passengers, you know, virtual names of passengers who you are transporting, and if you really want to, you know, nail your fuel usage, you know, make sure you you know, you do it with the fuel you're going to receive, you know, and that's pretty interesting. Then join a virtual airline. I mean, there are many great virtual airlines out there, so yeah, there are a lot of possibilities, and I think it's a great thing to use. So yeah, great question. Virtual airlines. I've never been member of one. Of course, I'm a flight instructor at the VATSIM Pilots Training Academy, so I kind of get a feeling of what's like to run an academy together with other people. So that's pretty interesting too. So yeah, as you can see, on VATSIM there are many opportunities. You know, joining a virtual airline, becoming a flight instructor, becoming an air traffic controller. There's just so many things you can do and learn from. So yeah, I mean, it's not only flying, or it's not only air traffic controlling. There's a lot of stuff behind it, so it's very interesting. Let's see, we have about 9 minutes left. If you have any questions left, please post them now. Now you still can. Ooh. Alright, let's take a look. I'll just pick another quick question from my own list. Let's take a look. I think I had all that already. Oh yeah, maybe this one is interesting. You know that VATSIM has different servers, and depending on where you live, you can pick one of the servers. You know, with tools like ServInfo or VATSpy, you can determine your ping with one of the servers. So in my case, I live in the Netherlands, so I get the best ping, about a 50, with the VATSIM UK server. So I joined that server. But does that mean that you cannot see any other airplanes or pilots who connected to other servers? No, that's not the case. You can see pilots who are connected to the USA server or to the Asia server, so that's not a problem. I mean, you know, you just connect to the server which is closest to you to get the best ping for you, so you don't have any lag like you have in video games. But it's a bad idea to connect with the US, because you're gonna have a much higher ping. But all the servers, you know, I think it's about 6 or you know amount of servers. They are all connected with each other. So even if there's a pilot flying from the US to Europe and he's connected to the US server, and you are a pilot flying in Europe and you're connected to the UK server, you're gonna see that pilot. That's no problem. So that's pretty simple. Let's take a look. What kind of question shall I do? If there's no other question in the comment section, I will just do one more here. Let's take a look. Oh yeah, this may be interesting. This might be a spark for discussion. But basically, it's a question I receive a lot. What's the difference between the IVAO, the IVAO network, and VATSIM? Um, um, you know, the history of VATSIM is basically they started as something called SATCO, and they basically split up in IVAO and VATSIM. And I've never been on IVAO, so I'm probably not be able to, you know, get a genuine answer to this question. But from just judging from the videos I've seen and from what I've heard, IVAO is more quantity than quality, but VATSIM is more quality than quantity. So basically, if the IVAO network has more pilots on a regular evening than VATSIM does, but the quality is just not the same. I might be wrong, I don't know, but that's just the feeling. I mean, VATSIM is using real-world procedures. I believe on IVAO they're using TeamSpeak to chat with controllers, while we just can, dial in the frequency and transmit on the frequency just like the real thing. But you could have many discussions about that, but I think you need to know IVAO is more quantity but less quality, but VATSIM is more quality and less quantity. But it's all it all depends how you see it, because the VATSIM network is getting much busier these years. I think. I mean, there are more and more pilots joining the VATSIM network. There are more and more air traffic controllers, and of course, these where there's not a lot of ATC usually, and they have an event, and then you say, okay, I want to experience the air traffic control in this country, so I'm just gonna fly to this country during this event, and there are many ways. So yeah, that's basically it. So I think there I'll do one more question that's coming up here in the comment box, and yeah, when you're making a new VATSIM video, I answered that question at the beginning of the video. So yeah, maybe at the end of this month or somewhere in September. And would you ever do a VATSIM group flight? Yeah, well, the thing is, the Dutch VAC on VATSIM, they organize group flights. I've never joined them actually. Most of the times it's just hard to, pick a date, and you just don't know if everybody can show up. And all those dates I couldn't show up. So, but it's a great thing to make a group flight. Just fly together with about 10 pilots to a destination, and then have a little chat during the cruise. And a couple of weeks ago, I did a a flight with someone else in a Spitfire. That's also great fun. So yeah, it's a good idea. And if you want to organize a group flight, within your VAC, just contact, make a forum post, and scramble some pilots who want to fly from A to B, and then you as the organizer can contact the air traffic controller in the airports you're gonna fly from and to, and yeah, you're just gonna have a great time. So it's a good idea to make a group flight. I don't know if it's good for a video, because there are a lot of people chatting in the background, probably on TeamSpeak. But yeah, it's quite fun. I also once did a VFR group flight, over the islands in the north of the Netherlands and the north of Germany. It was also a great thing, because if you are flying with little airplanes, you kind of fly in formation. So that's a pretty cool thing to do too. All right, I think that's about it. We are well on our way now. I'm now reaching the 1 hour mark, and yeah, I just want to call it quits right now. I think it's great, a great live session. Quite a lot of viewers and questions, so that's a good thing. I think it's good to do this again sometime, maybe a bit more general, meeting about flight simulator in general, flying, aviation in general. Maybe that's a good thing to do. This is kind of a bit more like a podcast actually, but yeah, I think it's working pretty well, and I hope you enjoyed it as well. So if you just popped in, I'm sorry, I'm gonna quit right now. There are a lot of questions which have been asked and which I've answered. So if you wanna review them, you can just watch this video again later on at your own convenience. And yeah, I just want to thank you for watching. Thank you for participating in this first live session of me. This is the first time I'm going live on YouTube. I'm glad it's working pretty well. And yeah, so until next time, maybe the next VATSIM Full Flight, you know, whenever that will be. And yeah, make sure you stay tuned via my Facebook page to get to know